Hi there, this is Doug, and uncharacteristically, I wanted to do a short. Why do I keep saying short? You know me better than that by now if you've listened to anything I've done. Video on the state of wholesale electrical distribution, and I guess some of my history. This is um, some statements, and I guess a lot of questions. If anyone feels worth chiming in and giving their 2 cents worth. So I really don't know where to go with this. This is kind of impromptu, so we're just going to jump into it. As you see here, from my channel here on YouTube, I think as of today I now have 103 videos on the Eclipse ERP product, and I think that probably makes me the largest content creator of Eclipse material on YouTube, which I'm not sure gives me much of anything, and certainly anyone would question my sanity as to why I did such a thing. And I should say that I'm an oddball. If you've watched any of my videos so far, you probably get that. My path through Eclipse in this point in my life was, you know how it goes. Very seldomly in life do you end up where you were trying to go or where you expected to go. It's not that where you're at is bad, but it's certainly not if you were 10 years old and someone was asking you what do you want to be when you grow up, that this would be the thing that you would have picked. Life has a way of putting you where I guess you're supposed to be. In my case, I was a techie. I was a dumb kid from a small town in northeastern Washington state. Graduated from a high school. My graduating class was, I think, 32 kids. And there in 1984 in rural northeastern Washington, Kettle Falls, there were not a lot of opportunities. Everyone that I was familiar with in the area was pretty close to poverty. Occasionally you had boom and bust cycles where some would make up enough money during the winter working at one of the sawmills that they could put a couple of things on layaway, rent some new furniture, lease a new car, and they'd be living high on the hog for 6 months. And then by summer, the repo people have come and taken it all away. A lot of my neighbors worked that way. So me as a dumb punk graduating high school at the age of 17, I joined the Air Force because there was nothing else to do except maybe, I don't know, wander out in the woods and live off of bear meat. Which didn't sound too appetizing to me, if you've ever been up too close to a bear. I joined the service. This was around the time that Matthew Broderick and the movie War Games came out. I think just a year or so earlier, and the Whopper computer and NORAD and all that good stuff. And by some stupid dumb luck, my 18-year-old butt ended up at NORAD. Which was a surprise, no doubt. And for 3.5 years of my life, I got to hop in a bus and drive into that every day, and work on the ancient computers that ran the place in 1984. You think you feel weird when you go into work in the morning? Try walking through those doors. As you go off to work and never know if there's going to be a world left when you come back. And that was where I was at the age of 18 and a half or so. And the miraculous technology that I worked on back at that time were Data General Nova computers that looked like this monstrosity here. The thing had a power supply so big that you could arc weld with it. And I was a circuit board repairman and used to take these individual chips out and and unsolder them and replace new ones. That's a core memory board. That board is about 16 inches square and held a entire whopping 8 kilobytes of RAM, which is about what, six or seven typed pages of information. Yeah, 16-inch square, 8 kilobytes of RAM. That was ancient, outdated. That was 1967, 68 technology. It was ancient when I was in there working in 1984, 85. And that was what was defending the modern Western world from the Soviet threat. Yeah. I have had the illustrious opportunity of managing to be what I call the person that got the last chance to see, using a Douglas Adams descriptor back in the day. Something about being born in 1966 and being a kid in the 70s and being a 20-something in the 90s and all that good stuff. It's always felt like I would get into a world and environment and get comfortable with it just as it was dying and fading away and being replaced with something even weirder. For a lot of my years, I felt like I was kind of surfing that wave, but it seemed like everything behind me was just rotting and falling away. Funny how your mind plays tricks with you. Anyway, Kettle Falls was fun, and it was a small logging and mining town that had done pretty well for itself for a few years. I mean, it provided a livelihood for a substantial number of people, 1,100 or so when I was a kid, that raised family, had kids, and did the things that they were able to do. And I remember being a 15-year-old punk, and we'd tie a rope to that trestle bridge there and swing out and dive into Lake Roosevelt. God, that water was cold. But to be 15 again, which was a lot more fun, I think, than being 57. Anyway, so I got out of service. And ended up as a defense contractor, working for the Navy and the Marine Corps for several years. Found that infuriating. I always found government service to be so incredibly inept and corrupt, and I thought going into the private sector would be better, because I thought I could understand capitalists, at least the idea of running a company that's for profit. At the end of the day, you have to. There's a lot of kooky shit you can do, but you still got to make money. So there's a limit to how insane you can be. Boy, have I been wrong. So eventually I got out of defense contracting, ended up in Atlanta working for a company called Scientific Atlanta, which was a number 99 on the Fortune 100 back in 2000, I think it was, 99, 2000 when I started working for them. And I thought I had arrived. I'd clawed my way to middle management, was working for a respective company. Now I could kick back and be a bureaucrat and live happily ever after. Yeah, that lasted about 2.5, 3 years. Went through the year 2000 bug. Went into a company that existed in 28 countries and had 29,000 some odd employees. And by the time I left 2.5, 3 years later, it operated in, I think, 8 countries and had 7,000 or 8,000 employees. I had nothing to do with any of it. It wasn't my fault. But, lo and behold, last chance to see. By stupid luck, I ended up working for my uncle in Southern California, a place called Wholesale Electric, which back in the day looked like that, and like most electrical distributors, was not all that impressive. After working at NORAD as a 18-year-old, and then working for a Fortune 100 company, and then finding myself given essentially a broom closet to operate out of with a bunch of computers on the floor, plugged into a broken UPS, and working in a company that basically resold metal boxes and conduit and THHN wire. I was not impressed. I mean, it beats being starving to death, but to say I felt like I had fallen from grace would be the understatement of the century. Oh boy. Um, I In 2001 I was working for Scientific Atlanta, and I think with benefits all I was making about $78,000 a year in Atlanta, Georgia, which was good bank for back there. Working in electrical distribution, it took me 20 years to claw myself back up to that salary. Not that buying power, that salary, that number. Um, Electrical distribution, I could say, it'll keep you from starving. It'll pay the bills. It's more or less steady work, but not a lot of people that get rich off of it, unless of course you're a salesman. And I tend to be everything that's not a salesman. So that sucks to be me occasionally. I prided myself and always have as being the guy that knows the thing. Um, and I'm good at that. I can read 150-page thick manuals, on a Saturday afternoon and not slip into a coma. I can spend hours and hours fiddling in and entering abstract commands and things to make something finally work. I was okay with that. But I'd come from first the military and then defense contracting and then Fortune 100, and I was used to a professional environment, and electrical distribution was never that. When I came in there, most of the employees that worked for my uncle were ex-Vietnam vets. Some of them were convicted felons. Some of them were soon to be convicted felons. A wide menagerie of ne'er-do-wells and people who were artists, musicians, creatives of some form types that got into electrical wholesaling because, well, they just needed a temporary job to pay the bills until their real career kicked off, and 40 years later realized that that life pulled a little flim flam on them, I guess. Um, I have spent most of my career in electrical distribution from 2001 to now 2023, doing everything possible to escape it. But once the universe decides that you belong somewhere, it doesn't let you go easy. And for some strange reason, it seemed to think that that was where I needed to belong. And probably because I'd never met anyone in electrical distribution that wasn't an eccentric misfit, and, well, I guess that suits me just fine. As I said, you don't get rich at the job. Almost everyone has got a thing that they think they really are, and they're just doing that to pay the bills, when it's really the other way around. Um, and I have to admit the most interesting people that I could have ever met in my life uh, walked in and out of a warehouse, just schlepping parts. I never intended to be the guy that knows Eclipse. There were a lot of people back in 2005 when we went on Eclipse that were so much smarter than me. I couldn't even hope to ever get to the point of being worth polishing their shoes. Um, Back then, Eclipse was a tight organization. They really walked the talk and really ate their own dog food, and their customer support was spot on. I mean, usually night or day, you could call up that phone. Within 3 rings, someone would answer, and more than likely, they knew the products so damn well that they didn't even have to transfer you. They could fix the problem right over the phone. Needless to say, Epicor Eclipse as it is now is nothing like the original Eclipse Corporation before they even got bought out by Intuit. And it was ancient software. It is ancient software, but it was well built. It was built on very solid principles. It was built on a bulletproof database system, even as ancient as it was, and they worked very diligently to really figure this out and do it right. Little did I know that they'd had a lot of experience, because they'd actually been working on the process, if you will, since 1976, when shims was first introduced, and even on products before that. When we started on Eclipse in 2005, this was the user interface. They were still working on Solar. It was only about 30-40% feature complete. It took them years to get it cleaned up to where it is now. And it is kind of a little clunky and hokey pokey by modern standards, but boy, has it come a long way from when I was working with this. Now, after going from Nova computers and teletypes, which I started with, to Windows NT and Windows 95 and Windows 97 and a whole graphical user interface and stuff, and then 2005 going back to this. Once again, it felt like my life was falling from grace. I was not a fan of this software. It looked horribly arcane, kludged together, and just staggeringly backwards. And I held some resentment for Eclipse and the Rocket Universe database, at that time known as IBM Universe, for a long time. I tried everything possible to learn as little as I could get away with on this software, because I saw myself as a classical IT guy. I ran Microsoft Exchange mail servers, I put together Linux file servers, I programmed routers, and this was just ancient stuff. This was a side gig on my job, I thought. And it's funny how the thing that you think of the least, the thing that you try and avoid the most, becomes eventually the thing. All the other stuff that I was into went away, and now Eclipse is the only thing that's left. God has a sense of humor. Everything that I learned about Eclipse over the years was out of necessity, not out of interest. Always the, how come this thing is doing that? How do we make it do this other thing? Doug, we need to do something or other. How do we make that happen? Hours and hours and hours I spent testing and troubleshooting and doing things that this software was never intended to do. And quite often I had no idea what I was doing, or even if it could be done. I did not start out as a programmer, even though I've been in IT my whole life. I started out as a hardware guy. Give me a circuit board to solder on. That's fine. Don't ask me to write assembly code or C++ or Pascal or God forbid Perl or anything else that came along. I was not a programmer. I only took a few programming classes in college on dead languages, and had no interest. I have a god-awful memory, and I'm easily distracted. And if you could think of something that makes me least likely to be a successful programmer, I'm all of those things. And yet that didn't stop me from having to write all kinds of weird little scripts and find funny little ways with technology of making Eclipse do the things we needed it to do. And I gotta hand it, over the years I developed a great deal of respect for the software and its original creators, whom in my mind were, I don't know, like the presidents on Mount Rushmore. I mean, yes, I knew at some point in my head that these were real people, but they were like gods, because they could take this ancient thing and this ancient language, pick basic, and this ancient database, and despite how old that code was and how contrived some of the add-on products were, it worked. It was unkillable. In 17 years of running Eclipse, I never lost a file. I never had a database corruption. I never had a server. Well, I think I had a server crash once. That's because the fire sprinkler system went off on it. I have never, in all the software that I've ever worked on, had anything as bulletproof reliable as this damn Eclipse program was. Um, and I begrudgingly developed a respect for it that I did. Here's the Wikipedia article on the Eclipse ERP, and oh my goodness, well, it says it started in 1990. I have it on authority that it was 1988, more or less. But still, all things considered, my God, 32 years, how time flies. Um, these characters, the original authors, I've never met all of them. But as fate turns out, I eventually met that one. Or, well, in a very complicated thing which I will explain later, I never met him, but I did work for him for a year. If that makes any sense. We'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, Eclipse. Technology-wise, horribly outdated. And there are layer upon layer of different technologies. At this point, all of them outdated. Way, way outdated. Whether it be the Java interface that's Solar, or eTerm, which they discontinued support on, I think, 10 years ago, or the Universe database that Rocket owns, which is the PIC system that was developed in 1968, 10 years longer than 10 years before SQL was developed, and the retrieve pick basic language, and all the weird contrived bits of Microsoft technologies and such that were used for the various companion products like Eclipse Mobile, which is a lot of open source software, and the Formscape that does the printing subsystem and forms processing, which God knows how many times that's changed hands. It's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of layers to that onion, and the fact that it works as reliably as it does is truly a testament to the dedication of the programmers and the team of people that went behind it. But anyone looking at this thing and knowing the weird mixed bag of Scotch tape and baling wires that's behind this pretty interface, arguably speaking, knows that it should have been replaced a long time ago with other technologies. Which brings us to the state of wholesale electrical distribution, which honestly, when I got into electrical wholesaling in 2001, it looked like an ancient, outdated business model to begin with. It felt an awful lot like the mom and pop corner grocery store in Paducah, Idaho, or Paducah, Kentucky. That's actually a real place. I've actually been there. In a world of Walmarts. It just, it didn't make any sense. And year after year after year, I've seen the industry get tighter and little companies close or get bought out by bigger companies, CED, CES and their variations, Rexel, Gexpro, Granger and all of those characters, eating up more and more and more and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually getting to the wonderful world of some of the online e-tailers or e-commerce that we have now. And this business never made any sense to me. It always seemed like a horribly outdated business model mixed with a lot of used car salesmanship. And for a lot of years, I felt that electrical distribution as it was just kind of existed as a holdover. Just the boomers that started those companies and the boomers that were still electricians that were running small electrician shops were just used to that model. Just like you can go to certain ethnic parts of Los Angeles and little corner markets that or meat markets still exist. Because a certain group of people are just accustomed to doing business that way. But it always has felt like it's 1 year from death from me, and I've never understood why it hasn't completely collapsed. We live in a weird world. My dear uncle that started Wholesale Electric in 1985 and had already been working for electrical wholesalers for a good 20 years before he started the company. It was a madman relationship business when he got into it. The world of five martini lunches. Take a customer out, get them drunk, take them to the local pool hall and play till 10 o'clock at night. For $100 a game odds. Then pour them into the car, drive them home, and drop them off on their doorstep. And while they're in a confused daze and drooling on themselves, get them to sign the order. That was that was a lot of the world that he existed in. A lot of that was relationship-based businesses. You had little businesses that supported other little businesses. In a lot of ways, the distributor became a bank. A lot of them couldn't exist without those little lines of credit that they got, and looking the other way, and pushing the loan back, and helping them do a little trickery on the invoicing so they could keep going another month. And I could see that how that would build deep relationships. They were like what's a Japanese karatsu, I think it was. Um, I could see that. But that died in the 90s. By the 2000s, it was on life support and fading fast. As my uncle would put it, no honor among thieves. No one was reliable anymore. You were only as good as today's best price, and the fact that you saved their ass, and the only reason why they have a company today is because of some thing you did to pull their ass out of the fire the year before. Doesn't matter if you're a nickel too high on Romex wire, you don't get the order. And that is the world as we see it to now. Everything has become so cutthroat. And between what you can get on Amazon and these weird aggregators like Supply House and Zorro and Ferguson and on and on and on, uh, and a lot of cases, a lot of these prices that you can get online, even the retail price sometimes is competitive with what the wholesale price is. I don't get it. The last years of Wholesale before my uncle sold it, I mean, we did like almost $30 million in sales, and for $30 million in sales, once you paid all the salaries, paid all the taxes, and all the other overhead of running the business and such, you came back with not a lot of money. In a lot of cases, without getting the rebate money that you got either if you were in a buying group like Affiliated Distributors or iMark, uh, a lot of times those damn rebate checks that you were getting from them and the vendor, occasional kickbacks, was really the difference between having a profitable year and barely breaking even. Um, and that was back 2012, 2013, 2015. Um, and then all the ridiculous consolidations. Uh, the first the big American companies shut down their factories and they moved to Mexico. Then they shut down Mexico and they moved it to China, if they could get away with it. Then other Chinese knockoff companies came up with a new brand, and duplicated the product and cut the price down another 30%. And then you had companies that had been well-known American companies became just a brand, just a label. They just third party had it built by somewhere overseas, had the overseas company slap their name on the box, and it was the same damn stuff. The quality went to hell, um, and and everyone just kind of put up with it. A race to the bottom. Um, it became, or at least out here in the West Coast. I'm in California. I don't know what back east is, but I don't think anybody is able to run an honest business anymore. Everyone is bending the rules on the taxes, and tweaking this little thing and tweaking that, and maybe running it without enough insurance, and maybe doing some things with their warehouse that they shouldn't do, and maybe employing a few illegals here and there. every other trick in the book just to try and squeeze enough profit to make this industry worth its while. When every year the margins get a little tighter and a little tighter and a little tighter. Um, and eventually, and we already seen it in some places where manufacturers are starting to put the stuff out and sell it direct and bypass everybody. And now an electrical wholesaler. It seems like you're taking on all of the incurring all the risks, but the rewards are slim. You've got to handle the returns, which quite often the vendor will fight you tooth and nail to just try and get your money back on. Of course, you have idiots, scab electricians that probably couldn't spell electricity, or these characters are hiring Guatemalans that barely speak any English and giving them no training whatsoever, and they wire something in backwards and short it out because they're colorblind, and then send it back to you. This is defective. Bullshit. And this stuff just piles up. The dead stock that you can't ever resell, the California doing Title 24 rules and then just obsoleting entire warehouses of material that is otherwise perfectly usable, but it doesn't comply with the new efficiency laws. Um, Stuff that's just plain garbage. LED lighting that knockoffs, and it looks good, and you wired it in, and it's good for 90 days, and then the 2-cent transistors go poof on the damn thing, and it goes out. They tell you 21,000 hours of life expectancy on the LED, but they didn't tell you the damn transistors and the power supply are only good for 100 hours. It's just in every, and the inspections and the taxes and the employment laws and and on and on and on, and good luck trying to find employees anymore. Well, honestly, I've always felt weird about that. I've always felt in the middle. From the employer standpoint, I get it. There's not a lot of money to be had. There's not a lot of people you can pay decently. There's a lot of companies that would love to be able to pay their employees better. A lot of these small wholesalers run like a family, and I mean, you don't want to starve your family to death. But on the other end, there's not a lot of money to be had. In a lot of cases, a lot of times, there's just plain old scumbag businessmen too. On the employee side, I get it. It's really hard to want to put your heart and soul into a job that doesn't pay shit, isn't ever going to pay shit, has no opportunity for improvement, and as soon as they get the first chance to replace you with an illegal Guatemalan that'll work for 50 cents cheaper, they'll probably do it. It doesn't put you in a mindset of where you want to do your best work. From an employer standpoint, I mean, they don't want to. Even if they could pay more, they don't want to, because, well, there's a difference in style of work too these days, right? For a lot of these places that are used to a boomer or Generation X type of mindset, where you come in at 5 o'clock in the morning and you do the work that you're told to do, and you leave when they tell you can go, and you don't get that anymore. You don't get that kind of mindless dedication to the task anymore. Millennials and Zoomers will not put up with that shit. They want their work to have meaning. They want a progression. They want everything locked down and tightened up. They don't like ambiguity. They don't like surprises. They want a clear job description. They want everything colored within the lines, and they're always trying to strike that work-life balance in a world where there is no work-life balance. Yet nobody's happy with the outcome. And I honestly swear it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. Now we see a future of, and this is not just electrical distribution, but it's everywhere. We've got, for example, at this point, if nobody has seen these various Amazon robots, you've been living under a bridge, or a rock, or dead, or maybe all three. But, you see the warehouses of the future and shit like this, where robots move the racks around, your order pickers just stand in place all day, and the thing brings the part to them. And automated picking and packing and labeling systems like that. And we've all gotten used to this Amazon, and it's amazing. I mean, I can order things on Amazon. I have a variety of materials that I can't duplicate anywhere. There's no store that can afford, especially in the little town of Bodfish where I live, that could compete with what Amazon can do for quality and service and price. I can order damn near anything from almost anywhere on earth, and if it's not there within 3 days to 17 days, it's a miracle. And in, 10, 15 years of ordering things from Amazon, they have never goofed on an order once. And I buy from them weekly. That's scary. When we ran Wholesale, our failure rate on most orders, anecdotally speaking, if I was to believe the warehouse people and the drivers, was about 10%. 10% error rate in 2015. How the hell do small distributors run an old-fashioned way with ordinary people in an ordinary-looking warehouse compete with a world like that? And it gets worse, and it gets weirder. And now we're looking at things like this becoming a reality within 3 to 5 years. Amazon has already bought some of these and is prototyping them. Will this thing be it? No, but I'm sure the second or third generation of that thing will probably be it. Between all the other automations and anthropomorphic robots running warehouses, where does this go? I mean, if you're lucky, this is the world where you live in, with this type of manual warehouse where ordinary people are operating. Let's see, that was no better than to click on these. And these, of course, these are pictures of not your typical warehouse. That's a little closer to reality there. That looks more like the type of world that I operate in. Not enough shelves, things dumped in a corner, no bin locations, nobody can find what the fuck. It's a rare day when you have things even this good. Notice the lack of any bin location labels on any of those shelves. A lot of wholesale suppliers seem to run their warehouses, no matter what size they are, like they were just extended garages. We don't need bin locations. We don't need inventory. We don't need to put things away. Why on earth would anyone need to walk down an aisle and pull an order? That's ridiculous. That's what I pay them to do. Don't bother me with this shit. Kind of thing. And my thinking has always been that if you're still thinking that, the world of this type of warehouse is going to be profitable and survive in the future, I think you're kidding yourself. And of course, yeah, these pictures are the best of all scenarios. I've never worked in a facility that was as clean as these pictures, including the one that I operate in now. A funny thing, capitalism is supposed to be efficient with resources and with human capital and all that good stuff. And the one thing that I always saw in a warehouse was waste. Ridiculous waste. From the broken timers and keeping the lights on all weekend long while there's no one in the damn building, to all the orphan materials that got bought and didn't get sold, and yet for 15 years they sit on the damn shelf where we inventory them every damn year, sinking more and more money into these damn things that will never sell because the boss doesn't want to sell it because I paid good money for that. Well, yeah, 10 years ago, and it's missing half the parts and it's discontinued. The company that made it went bankrupt 12 years ago. Who the hell are you going to sell this to? Who's going to find it? Who's going to give a shit? In the case of when my uncle sold his company, I believe we had about a $5 million inventory. I think that was valued at the books. And the new company that came in, after they went through everything very thoroughly and decided what was sellable material and what wasn't, they had to write off $2 million worth of materials. I lost count of the number of of those, God, what were they, 8 by 8 by 40 dumpsters they had to pull in and fill with materials that went to the landfill. So I don't know where efficiency comes in with capitalism sometimes, but that leakage of money and dead stock for wholesalers has always just been jaw-dropping. If I had 10% of the money that they end up throwing away in dead stock, I'd be a millionaire by now, many times over probably. Which brings us back to Eclipse and why we're still on it. In a lot of ways, it feels like we're in an industry that has at best been stagnating for years, and at worst is probably dying at an accelerating rate as the entire world changes paradigm. I believe that there is a value in a relationship-based business, but the plain and simple model of buy as cheap as you can, store it in a warehouse as cheaply as possible, and sell it as high as you can, and do every trickery in the books to try and give the illusion of being competitive when everyone is selling the same goddamn price within 5%, or the same goddamn part within 5% of the same price. Uh, in a lot of cases, it's the same damn materials that you can walk down to Home Depot and buy for damn near the same price, and they're selling at retail. This is why I think Eclipse is still there after 30 years or so, because let's face it, I mean, writing software, writing a replacement to Eclipse should have been done a long time ago. Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 other pieces of software out there, but they're as old as Eclipse. And I mean, you could get Infor, you could get NetSuite, you could get, God help you, Epicor Prophet 21. You'll hate your life, but you could, and 1 or 2 others that have eluded my thinking at the moment. But almost all of them are as old as Eclipse is, and there's no new innovation. I mean, there's been a lot of innovation in accounting software. There's some neat things like Acumatica or Odoo that show promise, but they don't have the business logic to run a distributor like a piece of software that's 32 years old is still able to do. You've got to be kidding me. And this type of platform is not in a position to exploit the future. The future, obviously, if you don't have an effective e-commerce storefront, you're not competitive now. And that's been true for probably well over 7 years. And yet Eclipse, for God help you if you've tried to do the Epicor Commerce Connector, that type of thing, and Magento, that's a great way of taking $100 bills and running them through a garbage disposal. God help you. This whole paradigm of business is not where the world is going. I mean, if you've worked on Eclipse, you know its limitations. 35 character descriptions, no pictures of products, a search engine that compared to a common Google search is ridiculous. A batch system of doing things. The customer not able to do a lot of self-service or do their own quotations, pricing matrix system that's so extraordinarily convoluted that it's damn near impossible to maintain, and just the nature of the business itself, the prebates, rebates, kickbacks, buying groups, and other nonsense to give you the illusion that you're getting a deal when you're paying full price. The world is not Epicor Eclipse anymore. And if you're still thinking the batch process 1980s Epicor Eclipse way of kind of doing things, I gotta wonder how many more years any of us have, because the world seems to be moving very, very fast. You want to scare yourself, play with something like this, ChatGPT. I'm sure you've heard that in the news once or twice, and it's usually connected with the words Armageddon or Oh my God. And I have seen an awful lot of technology over the years come and go, And let me tell you, this scares me. Most of the shit that I've seen over the years was hype. I mean, I remember the personal home computer craze of the 1980s and having Commodore VIC-20s, Commodore 64s, TI-99 4As, Coleco Adams, TRS-80s, Apple IIs, Apple IICs, and on, Commodore Amigas, earlier Macintoshes, and it was, God, what, 20 years before personal computers became anywhere close to the promise of the hype of the 1980s. We don't live in that world anymore. Now we live in the world of technology that you hear about on a YouTube clip today and is on your store shelves in a month. All the hype that I've seen about ChatGPT, I've tried really hard to discredit it, and I can't. Is this thing general artificial intelligence? Is it God? No. Could it be? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. As I mentioned, I'm a crappy programmer. That hasn't stopped me from having to write over 150 programs in my day. True, not Eclipse, but, what I thought was pretty sophisticated stuff. And then I saw a YouTube clip on ChatGPT, and it can do programming. And I went, yeah, sure, right. This thing, God knows what it's able to produce. So I gave it a simple little task here. ChatGPT is not optimized for programming, but it does write programs. And I write a lot of stuff in Python these days. And I sat down and I came up with a very simple set of instructions and a fairly simple, easy to track program. And I knew that, if I worked on it, knowing what I know, it would probably take me an entire day to write it and debug it 15 or 20 times until I got it just right. So let's call it 5 to 8 hours worth of human labor to produce this Python script. I gave ChatGPT, and I didn't even give it any sophisticated instructions. I think I gave it 2.5 lines of information and hit enter, and it almost had the program written before I managed to get my finger off the enter button. And I checked that code, and it was more elegant than the code I would write. It wrote the comments in, everything was correct, and it worked the first time. And let's be generous and say it took it 9 seconds to do it. Oh my God. From 5 to 8 hours, generously, to 9 seconds and better. This is coming. And you're looking at, do you think Epicor is going to bolt artificial intelligence technology into Eclipse? No. Or M4 or NetSuite or Profit 21? No. Where are the companies that are thinking up the ERP programs of the future that are completely e-commerce savvy, that are designed for customer self-service so a customer can work up their own quotes? Where's the reverse bidding systems? Where's the sophisticated job management for bids and projects, and a system that can artificially intelligently go out and comb the internet looking at what the market conditions are, market prices, and find opportunities? I don't see any of that in this type of platform, and I can't imagine if there ever would be. And I don't relate. If you're going to do a relationship-based business, you've got to be able to do something that Amazon can't do. And Amazon doesn't build relationships. They are able to produce get a cheap product out there as fast as possible, but they don't care about you. They're not going to help you out if you need a little carryover for the month. They're not going to help you find better ways of getting that project completed. But then every market, every direction seems to be having this problem of, how the hell do you compete in a future of artificial intelligence where this thing may end up in some form or function be your boss or your co-worker or your replacement, and things like these stupid Amazon robots you might be working alongside or might replace you entirely. I don't see any of the current businesses or current wholesalers now we're all calcified. We're all stuck in the mud. We're all trying to, how do we do the same thing we've always done slightly more efficiently so we can squeeze a few more pennies out to keep the lights on for another year. That is not the model of the future. If you're trying to do the same thing the same old way with the same technology, but well, let's cut the salaries another 10%. Let's fire a few more people. Let's hire some more illegals. Let's cheat on our taxes more. It only gets you so far, and eventually you'll hit a wall and you'll be gone. And I think you'll be surprised at just how soon that wall is. And not just our industry, but basically any middleman industry is ripe for that. So you got to ask yourself the question: what the hell? What value-added proposition am I doing? How am I so deep into the relationship, so deep in the pockets with my customers, that the only way that they quit doing business with me is because they're out of business? And I wish I were smart enough to tell you what that is, but I'll be damned if I found it. High hopes. I have high hopes. I don't know what the future looks like. Is it Star Trek? Is it Star Wars? Is it Mad Max? I suspect it's a little of all of them and at least 500 other things we never imagined. Human beings are amazingly good at figuring out a way of adapting and doing new ways of things, but this kind of thing is not the new way. Which brings me to my last and final, which was the software that should have been. And as I mentioned, I have had nothing but respect over the years for these characters, because whether I wanted it or not, they gave me the last 17 years of my life. They gave me a career. Their wonderful software allowed my family's company to employ 56 people and operate for 15 years. It allowed my uncle to sell the company to another group of people, which I worked for another 5 years. It gave me a job that was relatively stable for 17 plus years now, and allowed me to become the guy who knows Eclipse, for whatever that means. And so there's a respect that I have for what these characters were able to do. Clark. A funny thing happened. As I said, Eclipse, yes. Ancient, but was pretty neat software. Epicor, on the other hand, I have never been terribly fond of. I was not terribly fond of Intuit when Eclipse was bought by them. I was less enamored with Activent when Intuit sold them to Activent, and Activent spent a good couple of years trying to kill off the product. And Epicor and its weird gyrations back and forth, I've never been a terrible fan of. But I have to admit, credit where credit's due. Over the past couple of years, they have gotten a hell of a lot better than they were. There were a couple of years where I would have given anything. I would have paid any amount of money. I would have cut out half my own liver and eaten it to be able to get away from Epicor. And it wasn't Eclipse, it was Epicor. They were just awful for supporting this software. And that drove me to a weird conversation with Zerion Group and Tony King. And he pointed me to Covestone, the best kept secret that no one realizes exists. And when I discovered Covestone and went through a product review session in 2018, 2019 with Rai Yenny, Clark's eldest son, I believe he is, I was blown away. And I had to admit I was starstruck with being able to talk to Clark, because here was the guy who created Eclipse, or at least so he said. Maybe these other characters, if they'd ever talk to me, they might have different opinions of him, but Clark is pretty sure that he invented Eclipse. I wasn't there to argue the case. And they introduced me to this. And this is, well, it was, as Clark put it in his own words, this is Eclipse version 3. And he wrote it. He spent 16 years of his life rewriting all of Epicor Eclipse, right down to the universe database. This man was so hard-boiled, he wrote his own database to replace universe. And this thing is fast, and it's multi-user, and it is incredible. And anyone that's worked with Eclipse is already 90% familiar with Covestone, because it looks very similar. It functions very much the same way, and Clark refined so much of all the things that were little glitches and itches and irritations with this ancient software. Clark improved upon. He spent, as I said, now 17 years of his life writing this thing. And I was so enamored when I got to work for them for the next year as a product, what would you call me? I worked the help desk. I was kind of a corporate trainer plus cheerleader plus, also help test and debug the software, create training videos, that type of thing. By no means am I a genius. Just a lot of hard work, a lot of hours staring at these screens and trying to make things work. And I had so much faith in what this thing could be. And I don't know what happened. This was the thing that should have been the thing. Everything that Clark was trying to do was everything that was needed. But he couldn't sell it. Nobody wanted it. Because, if you were already on this and you were in a dying business, why the hell would you spend all that money to upgrade? I think there was a lack of faith in the future of distribution, and so Clark couldn't find any new customers. How many companies do you know, or people do you know, that are starting new electrical wholesale distributors? None. No one's saying anyway. And that's a shame. And of course, there was another quirk, which was Clark is an amazing guy. He's also incredibly frustrating to work with. He has an arrogance like nothing or no one I've ever met in my life. There is no negotiating with him. He knows best, and he will do as he sees fit, and you will go along with it, or there's the door. He is right in a lot of cases, but when he's wrong, he's very wrong. And there's just no amending that. And, he's a good coder, but he wrote all of this pretty much single-handedly. And he could never train any other people into being able to do the code work. And no one programmer, no matter how good they are, can manage to debug all of that complexity of code single-handedly and not make a few mistakes. And that was the end of that. The software that should have been, and I have no idea where it's going to go from that. So, all the things that you hated about Eclipse, well, they were fixed. But, in some ways, in a lot of ways, it's like having invented the cure for cancer and all everybody wants is a nose job. But, keeping in mind, the code itself is imperfect. It needs more refinements. Clark cannot do it all by himself, and I don't know where it goes from there. But I think it's an indication of the industry at large, which is, where is capitalism going? Where is the world of middlemen going? If you take a look at the modern Western economy, so much of us are middlemen. We're paper pushers, paper shufflers, rubber stampers, that kind of thing. And now I don't know who eventually comes up with the thing that replaces Eclipse, but I can tell you it doesn't look like Clark's thing, and it doesn't look like Eclipse, and it doesn't look like Prophet 21. It will have artificial intelligence. It will have its own language that is not even like a programming language. You might even just speak to it. It will artificial intelligently develop so many of your business products, processes. Paper will go away, and this thing will be something else, and it doesn't look like this. And so much of it will be web-based. So, the questions I present to you is, where does this go? Is there a future for electrical distribution? And if so, what does it look like? Because I'm pretty sure it doesn't look like what we have now. What ideas do you have to be able to compete with a world of artificial intelligence and robots, and you're only as good as yesterday's price, and an awful lot of overhead and an awful lot of risk and pennies back return on the dollar? How does this become something else? I would love to hear your comments. I have no delusions that anyone's actually going to listen to this video, and honestly, I don't think I would either. When I started this, I thought it would be 20 minutes, and now we're on the 1 hour mark, and, well, this was unscripted. I don't mean to sound pessimistic, and I don't mean to sound bitter. As I said, electrical distribution was nothing I ever intended to get into, but it's provided a decent life for me. I'm not a millionaire, but I own my own house and all my cars are paid for. Not much more than that, but it did do that. And I do owe a debt to Clark and crew for having developed such a product that allowed me to make a living for as long as I have. And I just wish I knew what was next. And nobody seems to know that. And of course, as we said, it's not just this industry. It's all of the industries. But these weird little tricks like the buying groups and the rebates and the probates and the rebates and the blah 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 blah. Once this Chat GPT thing, once AI starts really making some headway in business, and we're talking 18 months at most, it's a whole new game for all of us. What does the future bring? Anyway, this has been Doug Fashing, and this was not really a technology thing. This was me ranting, and once again, thank you for all of the 3 people that will ever watch this video, for your time and attention and letting me rant. I hope all of us have a promising future. And with that, have a good evening.